And we're off. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Minicamp day 2 recap. Oh, look, I got an eye thing going on. Joined again by Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, who I saw only a few hours ago and who's kind of sick of. No, I'm just joking. You know I love you, Perk. Hi, Perk.
How are you, Poop? I'm
I am,
not gonna drop profanities like Mike McDaniel, so don't worry.
Mike's letting it loose. And by the way, for those not familiar with Mike McDaniel, if you watched the in-season Hard Knocks, he's not somebody who's above throwing a few F-bombs or S-bombs, and he was at it again today. And actually, it was a result of my question when I asked for specifics about his non-negotiables, and we will get to that because that's been a hot topic of conversation at Dolphin Minicamp, this whole notion of a culture change. Probably should start with practice wrap up, or should we start with the culture change thing? What do you think?
Let's go practice wrap up.
Park. Okay. You first.
All right.
What's this?
I'll go first.
That's for putting you. That's the kind of professionalism you get here. Really well prepared with my notes of what to discuss from practice. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll tell you this. I thought the offense was making a few plays early, and the defense had been, I would say, the better unit in the OTAs that we had seen and the mini camp practice that we had seen. The defense, the offense, made some plays early in practice today, but then the defense resurfaced. Isaiah Johnson had a nice batted down pass. Willie Gay Jr. with a sack and an interception. I believe Grayson Murphy had another sack today after having 3 yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. There were some good things defensively. I think the first and second round picks, Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle from Michigan, Jonah Savanaya, Hawaii, Sabayanaya. I'm gonna get it one day. I think Jonah, both of them have shown me good things as far as awareness and agility. Once again, a reminder, these guys are in helmets, shorts, and T-shirts, so there's no pads. We can't tell much about the physicality of the linemen, but I will say the first and second round picks both show good awareness, good agility. It's not like they're in over their heads at this point. I like what I've seen from them. And then for the quarterbacks, Tua threw his first interception today. Might have been a cutoff route by the receiver. Might not have been Tua's fault. Tua has looked sharp. Zach Wilson, so-so. Probably his worst day in front of us. But I still think that he's a solid choice as number 2 over Quinn Ewers.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this as politely as I can. Quinn Ewers has looked very much like a rookie 7th round pick. I think I still have more hope for Ewers than Skylar Thompson down the road. But this notion that he could challenge Zach Wilson for the backup job in 2025, I think that's crazy. And understanding that, again, it's very early and all that. I do want to say Grayson Murphy, again, you mentioned he had one play where, again, he got in the backfield. He also had a couple of plays that were very good in run support. Mm-hmm. There was one play where he wasn't on the tackle, but he had Patrick Paul coming right at him, trying to seal him inside, and he got outside of Patrick Paul, which forced the running back to cut inside, which is basically his responsibility. So that was well done. I have to say, on the disappointing side, I don't think it's anything serious at all. But the last play of practice was a running play up the middle, and Grayson Murphy went up and got tangled up and turned around a little bit and immediately grabbed his side and went on the ground. We're not speculating on any injuries whatsoever. Like I said, I don't think it was anything to really be concerned about, but we need to mention it. As far as player participation, it was the same as yesterday. No Jalen Ramsey, no Jonnu Smith. Now, I don't know if you saw this, Perk, but there's a report, apparently Adam Schefter is suggesting that Jonnu Smith's absence is also excused along with that of Jalen Ramsey. Mike McDaniel, when he spoke on Tuesday, said specifically Jalen Ramsey's absence is excused, didn't say anything about Jonnu Smith, didn't say, however, that it was not excused. So we'll take that for what it's worth. Zach Sealer, again, didn't do anything in teams, as one would suspect. It makes perfect sense. Same with James Daniels, didn't do a whole lot, again, with the Guardian cap. And then Austin Jackson was doing some work on the side. He didn't practice. He didn't do anything like the second half of practice on Tuesday as well. Maybe some sort of minor health issue, but that's the player participation part of it. Anything stand out on that from your end? Whoa.
Not really. Bradley Chubb had the orange jersey today as the player of the day, and it was really kind of a cumulative effect. It wasn't necessarily a good performance from day one of minicamp, as Mike McDaniel told us. This is more of a cumulative thing of since he got injured. You remember that he did not play at all last season, and so this was kind of a reward for Bradley Chubb's hard work since December 31st, which is when he sustained that knee injury at Baltimore. So, I guess, and Taj Washington, the receiver, last year's 7th round pick or 7th? One of their 7th? Yeah, he was wearing a red jersey once again today. We don't know his ailment. He's out there running around, but the red jersey signifies do not touch. So, I think that kind of wraps it up for me.
And we've never asked McDaniel about whether it's related to the injury that had him on IR the whole season last year. It's entirely possible. Again, how can I say this delicately and being polite? Chances are, if it was a more prominent player, we'd be asking about it, but we didn't. So bad media, not asking the good questions. You mentioned Taj Washington. As we're talking about him, he did have a catch today that was interesting on a play where Dante Trader Jr., who had a pick on Tuesday, came close to having another pick, but what he wound up doing, instead of tipping the ball in the air, and it wound up straight into the hands of Taj Washington. You mentioned the Tua pick. Yeah, he was throwing to Nick Westbrook-Akine, or Nick Hyphen, as Mike McDaniel called him, during his press conference, as one media member who shall remain nameless, Omar, we're struggling to pronounce his last name, the second part of his hyphenated last name. And yeah, the way the ball was thrown, it was basically thrown directly to the DB, who was it who got the DB? Got that particular pick? I have it in my notes here. Hold on.
This wasn't Isaiah Johnson.
Oh no, it was Iffy. It was Iffy.
Iffy, that's right.
And that looked like one of those throws where, clear miscommunication. More likely than not, Westbrook-Akine stopped his route, and then Tua was anticipating continuing, and boom, the throw winds up going straight to the DB. So that was, and Zach Wilson didn't have necessarily a great day passing, but interestingly, he spoke to the media after practice. And basically, as Mike McDaniel had told us, he's been drilled to throw the ball earlier than you're accustomed to. And then Zach Wilson very interestingly illustrated, for those not aware, the Dolphin offense based basically on throwing to spot and anticipating that your receivers are going to be where they're supposed to be, as opposed to seeing them and spotting them and then leading them where you want to throw it. So this is why partly explains why there's always a drop-off between Tua and his backups, notwithstanding the fact that the backups just haven't been great quarterbacks. But this comes through repetition. If Tua's throwing 500 reps with Tyreek Hill on a certain route, he's going to know where Tyreek's going to be in that particular route. When you get to the backup quarterback, they don't have those kinds of repetition. That becomes a little bit more difficult to accomplish.
Right, and as I've said before, you kind of tip your hat to Tua, because he's throwing to a lot of unfamiliar receivers. There's no Tyreek, there's no Jonnu, and Waddle has been limited. So kind of tip my hat a little bit to Tua for what he's done here. He's working with, I guess you could say, inferior talent, right? And talent that he's not used to. I know that's
nice, sir.
It's the same way. It's the same thing. I know. I just said the same thing. It's inferior talent.
Wow, harsh.
Culture change. We're not going to coddle these players on this show. It's culture change. We're going to give them the truth. Right. Inferior talent, but they belong in the league.
By the way, I don't think this was a great day for any of the quarterbacks, but Tua was the best of the three. And Zach, to me, was a little bit better than he was on Tuesday. I thought he was really poor on Tuesday. This first throw on, and I have it on here on 11 on 11, was a beautiful throw where he kind of floated over the first line of defenders right into the arms of Tariq Black over the middle. That was a very nice touch throw for a guy who's known for zipping the ball. Quinn Ewers keeps taking shots down the field, and they just do not connect. He had one where he had Andrew Armstrong, the rookie free agent from Arkansas, open, and it was too far. And what stood out to me, and this is the book on him, is Anthony Armstrong does not have long speed. I mean, damn. Yeah, as in slow. But he's got great size. So, see what else here. Let me look at my notes here, Perkins, unless you got something that's coming to your mind here.
Well, I would say, it's very early. I have not seen some of the off-season role players, and I'll just say Nick Westbrook-Akini and Alexander Madison. I have not seen them using their physicality and their size very well. And look, again, they're not wearing pads, but I've seen Isaiah Johnson use his size and his length as a defender. So nothing to worry about. I'm just putting it out there. And look, I have not seen James Daniels and Jonah use their physicality, but I've seen their agility. I've seen something from them. I'm still waiting from NWI and Alexander Madison. It's early. I'm just putting it out there.
No, that's fair. I have here. No, can't go there. Again, there's certain things we're not supposed to say.
There are, and look, I'll say this for size. I've seen Ollie Gordon II, like that dude. Even without pads, bursting through a hole. The few times we've seen it, it's like, wow, that dude is big and strong, even without pads. So, again, for Madison and Westbrook-Akini, in training camp, I want to see some physicality. I want to see some evidence of your size being an advantage for the Dolphins.
No, I agree. I do have on my notes here, Storm Duck had a really nice play on the pass breakup on a pass intended for NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akini. Okay, so let's shift to, that's pretty much kind of all the highlights from practice. The Dolphins are scheduled to have a practice on Thursday. Let's just say it has been known to occur, not only with the Dolphins, but a lot of teams around the NFL, that they arrive to that final practice of the offseason program and they're like, yeah, no practice, or it turns into a walkthrough, or it turns a team outing. We don't know yet what exactly is going to happen, but we're just putting it out there. So the culture change chatter. And I'm going to start with this because Bradley Chubb addressed it. Alec Ingold addressed it yesterday. Tua addressed it a little bit. Mike McDaniel certainly was asked about it. And I will say this has got nothing to do with this, but I listened to Bradley Chubb talk, and to me right now, if I were a betting man, I'm going to bet he's going to be a team captain. The Dolphins had 8 team captains last year. I believe they're going to lose 4 of them. Calais Campbell, Teron Armstead, Jalen Ramsey, and I'm going to forget the other one because that's what I do.
Was Raheem?
I don't believe he was.
Or maybe he was the year before. They do lose 4.
I know, right? And David Long Jr. There you go.
That's it. Very nice.
Yeah. So if they go with the same number, and Tyreek's going to be a question mark. He has said maybe he doesn't deserve to be a captain. Still early, and by all accounts, whether he races Friday in Los Angeles or not, as my man Parker over here is just dying to know. Who knows? And by all accounts, he's doing everything that he's been asked to do. Maybe he has bought into this culture change, being more accountable, being on time, and all that good stuff. Bradley Chubb, to me, absolutely is going to be a team captain in 2025. I would almost say book it, but we shall see as far as that's concerned. So Mike McDaniel was asked about the culture change, and he's talking about how he likes what he's seen in the offseason in terms of establishing the team the way they want to do business, which is basically be on time, be accountable, and all that good stuff. And then he's got his non-negotiables that he talked about, at which point I asked, Mike, can you tell us what some of those non-negotiables are? And that's basically what he said. Be on time, be accountable, call out your teammates if they don't do what they're supposed to do, accept being called out if you don't do what you're supposed to do, And then if you don't want to be called out, change your effing behavior, which was, again, the F-bomb drop that he did after a couple of S's on Tuesday. So your overall thoughts on this whole thing, Perk, as we get into
I think that it's good that they're acknowledging that culture change needs to be made, but I don't want to. It's like Mike McDaniel has said a few times, like, I see better than I hear, right? That show me. Show me that there's going to be some culture change. Don't just talk about it. And Bradley Chubb brought it up today when he was asked by Omar Kelly. We've heard this before. I'm not saying that you guys were lying last year, but basically, why should we believe this? And Chubb said we were lying last year, that we stuck a toe in the water, but we didn't actually dive in. And so really one thing, and I'm glad to hear the players say this, that some changes need to be made. Tua said it, Ingold said it, Chubb said it. What I want to hear, Poop, is that Mike McDaniel is also making some changes. Bradley Chubb said today, and I asked him, is Mike McDaniel the same? And Chubb said, this is basically about the players, that Mike McDaniel gives us a message and he might deliver that message in a humorous way. It's up to us to carry it out. I would like to hear one of the players say, no, Mike McDaniel he's a little edgier. He's a little more stern this year. He's a little bit more about business. He's still the same funny, jokey guy, but he's got more of a seriousness to him. That's what I would like to hear, because if the change doesn't come from the top, I don't know that the players are just going to make the change. And when McDaniel says be comfortable with being called out, who's calling out Tua? Who's calling out Tyreek? Who's calling out Chubb and Brewer and Jonnu and Zach Sealer? I'm not sure how far this culture change is going to go. Anybody can call out Cam Smith, but like how far, it's got to start at the top. I think Mike McDaniel has got to call out Tua a little bit, Tyreek a little bit, and then maybe the players will go, oh, it is a little different around here. Maybe now I can say something to Jordan Brooks or say something to Ife Melifonwu. But to me, unless the change comes from the top, and again, I'm not saying Mike McDaniel has to go from players coach to hard ass. He just has to be more of an adult, a more serious attitude. I want to hear some players talk about that, and I want to see an example or two from Mike McDaniel in front of us.
Oh, that's not his style. You want him to like publicly criticize a player to the media? I think you're going to be holding your breath a bit there. This is like, and by the way, for those who think no coach would ever do that, Jimmy Johnson used to do that all the time. And Jimmy Johnson would tell you, I'm using the media to motivate players. That is not the Mike McDaniel style. It's never been the Mike McDaniel style. And I would be shocked if it ever got to that. To me, again, addressing the two issues that are there, for example, if somebody's not on time, to me, then bench him for let's say the first half of the next game or the first quarter, because Mike McDaniel told us he tried the fining route last year. That didn't work. Okay. And yeah, it could be short-term cost to the team. I'll use a particular player just as an example. Let's say Tyreek happens to be late to a team meeting. Sit his ass for the first quarter of the next game. I think that would hurt the team for that quarter.
Yep.
Maybe it sends a message to the team. Maybe it sets a precedent. As far as accountability, I'm not exactly sure how that manifests itself. Is it a matter of what coaches don't want, basically, again, is be on time, take care of your responsibility, and mental errors, miss assignments, those MAs. Okay. If you have an MA and you get called out in a team meeting, is that part of being accountable to say, yeah, my bad, I got to learn from it, as opposed to, I mean, was the problem with the Dolphins that severe that some guys would like refuse to acknowledge it in team meetings? I don't know that it got to that point. The other part of it, again, is, and I just wrote a column, you wrote a column, Shad wrote a column, Omar wrote a column, you get a column, you get a column, you get a column. This was the topic of the day, needed to be addressed, as I wrote in mine on MiamiDolphinsNSI.com. Perk wrote his on SunSentinel.com. And I suggest you read both. In fact, your assignment, dear listeners, read both and put in comments. Evaluate in the comments. Number one, this is normal, Chad. This is not something that's unexpected that you hear at this time of year. What are the things you hear this time of year? Excited to bounce back, really came into better shape. This is a year he takes a big step, and we're going to be more accountable, more in our P's and Q's. Again, this is not. The other part of it, too, is how exactly does that translate into wins and losses? It's part of a massive big picture as far as I'm concerned, because as I wrote with Tyreek, again, assuming it was him or whatever, Tyreek or Jalen Ramsey being on time, would that have prevented Tua from getting concussed at Buffalo or at home against Buffalo? No, but in a game, at times, if the margin is going to be this small, maybe it can be. It certainly doesn't hurt.
Right. I agree. And and I'll say this also, Poop, that I do want to see some kind of tangible signs of culture change. I don't know. Look, it's not about the team proving this culture change thing to the media or to the fans. They've got to prove it to themselves, and then they've got to have some sorts of results, whether it's wins and losses, or everybody shows up on time, or people feel comfortable calling each other out. All of this talk, I've got to see some type of result out there in front of my eyes for me to think they're serious about it. So, look, even if it's Mike McDaniel just saying something a little negative about a player, if Mike McDaniel doesn't change, why am I going to think the players are going to change? The players look to Mike McDaniel to set a tone. And if he doesn't change, either publicly or privately, and as they've said, Mike McDaniel is the same Mike McDaniel, I'm not sure that they're going to change. So he doesn't have to show us or me, the media, anything. But it would be nice if there was something that we could point to so that we could believe them, so that we could say, okay, this isn't like last year where they just had a toe in the water. They have actually taken a dive into the water, and now we can believe more of what they're saying.
Except the only issue there is the issue could be fixed, and we won't know about it because it doesn't play out publicly. Did anybody know?
Right.
None of us knew the extent of the issue the Dolphins had last year. The only thing we could see is when we were out at practice is Tyreek and Jalen Ramsey invariably came out after stretching. But
I don't take that as a sign of a problem, because quite often they were indoors during part of the stretching, and when the team went outdoors, they would kind of disappear. Sometimes they wouldn't be out there, but I always looked at that as they just had this elaborate stretching routine that they do, and they're allowed to do it on their own.
That's an assumption, correct? We don't know that for a fact. I don't know if we've. I think we did ask McDaniel at some point during the year, and I think he said that.
Yeah, we should. But to your point, that could be something that if it is an issue on the team, whether it's known to us or not, then address it this year, and let's not see Tyreek coming out after everybody else this year. If it's but that's what I'm saying. I would like for us to be able to point to something tangible, something that we can see and say, okay, changes are being made. It's not about us being impressed by the changes, but it would be nice if there would be something that we could point to see that these guys aren't just talking like Bradley Chubb said they were doing last year.
No, but the question would be then why would we expect it to change? Well, partly, I think, and this is something else I suggested, I think the Dolphins maybe got a little too happy with themselves after 2023, with all the contracts and all that, and it was like, look, hey, if it wasn't for the injuries, who knows how far we could have gone? We're right there. So I think there was a little bit of a sense of entitlement. I don't know if I want to say throughout the organization, but certainly in a lot of different places. And then, so perhaps they were humbled, and that could create a change. The other part of it, too, is you have certain players. If you look at all the frontline players who either have left or are going to leave, Jalen Ramsey, which players could have been part of an issue. And if we're talking culture change and the fractured relationship between Jalen Ramsey and Mike McDaniel, I don't think it's a major stretch to go that Jalen Ramsey was somebody who wasn't necessarily buying into a culture that Mike McDaniel wants to have. If you look, Calais Campbell, I can't imagine for 1 second this guy was a problem. Teron Armstead, I can't imagine for a second this guy was a problem based on what we know of them and, how everybody has always spoken of them. Javon Holland kind of gave off an air of somebody who was kind of at the risk of being worried about Javon Holland and his next contract. And that's not, again, one goal, one mission. That wasn't the case maybe with him, because I'm trying to think of who else was a high-profile player the Dolphins lost in the offseason, and can't think of anybody else.
No, that's it. That's it. I'll tell you this, as far as culture change, would it be a signal of culture change if Tyreek is not elected a team captain? I would take that as a signal of culture change, that we aren't accepting this stuff that Tyreek gave us after the Jets game, and we want different leadership from our team, and so we're going to move away from that. I would accept that. I just thought of that. I would accept that as a piece of culture change that we could see and kind of touch and grab and say, okay, I see how they're different than a year ago.
Would you see it as a nice piece of culture change if Tyreek said, you know what, I want to focus entirely on being as ready as possible for the start of training camp and forget about this race with Noah Lyles or the prelim on Friday?
I would take it more of a sign of a more significant change if he said, I'm not going to troll fans, and he actually followed through with it.
Good luck with
That's
that.
asking too much.
That would be, oh man. And the percentage of a chance that occurs.
Less than zero.
And that doesn't bother me if it's stuff unrelated to the Dolphins. When it comes to your team, stop it with the little like, was it about getting a job in coaching or something along those lines that he said last year? It's unnecessary.
Right.
And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything. But again, the Dolphins are not talented enough, particularly this year, if we're going to be honest about it, that they should not be putting every single solitary little microscopic, nugget on their side to help their cause.
Yeah, and here's why I obsess about the Tyreek running the race thing is because, look, yeah, if Tyreek is going to play in a charity golf tournament, that's one thing. This is a physical activity where he could pull a hamstring or injure a quad, and it could affect training camp. It could affect the Dolphins. And so is somebody going to say something to Tyreek, or are you just going to let Tyreek do whatever the heck he wants because he's so good you can't afford to piss him off? That's bad culture. And so, McDaniel kind of acts like, oh, Tyreek is running a race. I don't know anything about, that's not being the adult in the room. You don't have to be a hard ass, but tell us we've spoken to Tyreek. We know who he's training with. We know how he's going to train. We feel confident he's not going to pull a muscle. We feel confident he's not going to do anything crazy. And so, we've approved Tyreek going out there, but just kind of pretending like like you don't know anything about it. That's not culture change to me. That's more of the same. Tyreek gets to do whatever the heck he wants to do because he's so good. We're not going to talk to him. That's bad culture.
Okay. This is where it would be awesome if Tyreek on Twitter or whatever, on social media, which is a way he likes to communicate, would come out Thursday or Friday and say, you know what, that's Dolphins is more important. I'm gonna skip all. That would be very cool. And that would be maybe a step towards a culture change. And that would be the kind of move the captain would make. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. And so we want to see some examples here, of actual meaningful change being made. It's not about us. It's not about impressing the media, but I would like to have a reason to think they're moving in the right direction.
Fair enough. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. He is Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Catch his fine work at sunsentinel.com. Perk, the deep dive still on the hiatus?
It is. We're trying to come up with a date to bring it back, but our photo editor, the guy who actually records it and posts it, is on vacation. So we're on vacation.
Oh, so there you go. Okay. In the meantime, catch him here on the All Dolphins podcast. As always, please like, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this foolishness. And we like to provide foolishness. Check out my written content, that of my team at Miami Dolphins on SI.com. That's going to do it for today. Plan is on Friday to do on the next episode. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Wednesday and your entire Thursday and Friday up until the time when this is posted again.